Lesson 8.1 is on relations and functions. Essential question for today is how can you identify relations and functions? This is going to be a short lesson to kind of prepare you to work on this chapter where we work with different graphs and functions and solving different variables. First, we'll have to identify these vocab words for this lesson. Usually, even though we're using the same vocabulary or same word for math and English, oftentimes the definition for these words are going to be different. A relation, if you think about it in just English terms, it's going to be a relationship or how they relate to each other. Math is going to have a similar definition, but it's going to be a specific set of ordered pairs. And when we say ordered pairs, we're going to talk about x and y values from a coordinate plane. Let's say I have two number sets. I'm going to put the left one as x and then the right one as y's. So when I have two number sets like this, and let's say each of the number on the left side will have a matching number on the right side. So as you can see, I have one x paired up with one y value. What I can do is then I can write these numbers in an ordered pair, and that would show me a relationship. So I wrote down all my pairs, 0 and 2, 1 and 4, 2 and 3, and 3 and 5. So I put them in ordered pairs like this, and whenever you have a relation, you're going to put these braces to indicate that these ordered pairs are from a single relation. So we call these left column, or the numbers that appear on the first coordinate, as the domain. By definition, the domain is going to be the set of first coordinates, or in this case the left here, or the numbers that appear first. They are going to be also the x values. And then the columns on the right with the y values, we call that the range. And these are going to be the set of second coordinates, so the numbers that you see on the right side, or the y values. Later on, when you're learning different graphs, they may ask you to write the domain or the range. Sometimes it's just going to be 2, 3, 4 numbers that you have on the graph, or sometimes it could be a section, whole section of numbers that can be included as your domain or your range. Now we have finished talking about a relation, but what is a function? So function is basically a relation, and even though it's a relation, you're going to go a step further and have more specific requirements in order to call it a function. For a function, you can only have one domain paired with exactly one number of range. So to make it a simple statement, I'm just going to say each number of the domain is going to be paired up with only one of the range there. So let's take a look at some examples how it's going to work. So let's say I have a relation with a domain of 0, 1, 2, and 3, and then a range of 5, 6, and 7. I'm going to indicate the relationship with an arrow, and you're going to see that for each of my domain, I am going to have a number for the range. Now, as you can see, I have arrows pointing from the domain to range. And if you notice, I have two of these domains pointing to one of the ranges. So a function is kind of like having a crush. So when you and your friend, let's say 0 and 1, have a crush on the same celebrity, that is completely fine, right? So you have a crush on number 5. So my relation is going to have a set like this, and like I said, as long as you have a crush on the same celebrity or the same boy, it's going to be okay. You're not going to have any problem, and that's actually going to be called a function because one of each these domains will have exactly one answer. So none of them will have two numbers that they're going to pick. And when you have one domain paired up with one range, it's called a function. What if we have different scenarios? Let's take a look at the second one. Let's say we have the second set and we have 0, 1, 2, and then 5, 6, and 7. We're going to look at this and see if we can actually identify this as function. Let's say my arrows are going to look like this. So as you notice, from 0, I have 2 of these arrows coming out, and then the other numbers are just with one number. So I'm 1 and 6 paired up, 2 and 7 paired up. But then for my 0, I have 5 and 6. When you have a domain with two range numbers, it's not going to be a function. So from this relation set, if you notice that your x value would have two different y values, then you're not going to have a function. So by inspecting the numbers, whenever you notice that you have the same number for the domains and then multiple different numbers for the range, you can identify this as not a function, even if you are not drawing the graph on the paper. One of the tests that you can use to identify if a relation is a function is to use the vertical line test. I'm going to graph this, although as you get more practice, you may not even have to graph all these points on the graph, but it's nice to know how the test is going to work so you can use it in the future. So let's go ahead and take a look at this set of relation, and I have 4 points. So I'm going to go ahead and plot these 4 points first. So I have these following dots, or the points that I've graphed. Now for the vertical line test, you're going to have an imaginary line, a vertical line that would kind of hover over the graph. So because we don't have a physical class right now, I'm just going to pretend that I have a pen that I'm going to use for the test. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this pen and I'm going to move it across in a vertical motion, or horizontal rather, moving around to see if I am going to hit any of these 2 points at the same time. So if I start from here, I only have one, but then when I go to 3, I am going to be able to cover or connect 3, 1 and 3, 5 at the same time. So if I have those overlapping, I cannot pass the test, and that means it's not going to be a function. So to sum it up, if a vertical line passes through and you pass through more than 1 point on the graph at the same time, it's not going to be a function. So really the key points of this lesson is to identify if a relation is going to be a function, and to identify a possible domain and range from ordered pairs. Before I forget, for today's homework, you're going to draw a lemon next to your name for your homework. One thing that you'll have to be careful with graphing here, you're not going to actually connect the lines between the dots that you find, because you have certain domain and range pointed out for you. If you are connecting the dots, that means you're going to include all the range and domain numbers in between those two things. So we don't want to do that. So for your homework page, I mentioned on facts as well, it says number 16 to 22, no graph. So I'm not asking you to graph those numbers, but I do want you to graph the other ones just to try graphing these points. And they are pretty simple, like I said, so hopefully you can understand what's going on.